right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us again. Another episode, highly anticipated for all the stuff that's going on in the world. Another anticipated episode of Catching Up with Jacob. And here he is, Jacob Prash. How are you, Jacob?
Aren't you glad Jesus is coming?
Yeah, man, every day I would be insane.
That's how I am. I'm glad because Jesus is coming. There's not much else making me happy right now, but I'm glad that he's coming.
Amen. Well, Jacob, we'll talk a lot about Jesus, his word, the events in the world related to his coming. It was kind of an interesting thing. I don't know if a lot of Christians know this, but I think many verses are in the New Testament, and overwhelming, I think it's a third of all verses in the New Testament is related to the return of Jesus. So it's a huge, important topic in the Bible. And yet many churches, many denominations, many Christians don't talk about it, don't think about it. Jacob, you were around in the 70s with the Jesus movement, and you were around where Hal Lindsey wrote his book, The Late Great Planet Earth. It seemed like at the time people were talking about the return of Jesus much more than it is now. What's your take on that? Just as a side note.
Obviously, much more, as I've always pointed out, that the fact that there's less interest in the return of Christ now than there was 40 years ago is part of the deception of the last days in itself. We're 40 years closer and far less interest and far less knowledge among many Christians. And a lot of what's out there is erroneous. What people are saying is much of it is actually erroneous. So this is the situation we're facing. But then again, in the Olivet Discourse, it's the situation Jesus told us we would be facing. So here we are. Here we are. Well, I would say that the first emphasis of Scripture in terms of a proportion of its content and focus is salvation. That's right. The first. Then it can be debated. Is morality, righteousness, or the return of Christ to establish the righteous kingdom?
Right.
There's a draw for the second place. So certainly what people call eschatology is definitely up there.
Yeah. And obviously, I think they're all related in terms of...
And we're all interrelated, yes.
You take Jesus, and you take him as a whole, not only his person, his work,
yes,
also in terms of salvation, but is also his reign and his kingdom to come. So
yes.
I often wonder if we are reading the same Bible as Christians, why don't we?
But also he spoke of his return as our redemption. Your redemption draws near.
Amen.
The finality of the process of salvation, which is the resurrection and or the rapture, our redemption. We've been bought, but now he picks up what he paid for with his blood. You can't separate his return from salvation.
That's right. Well, even the writer of Hebrews says when Jesus appears a second time, he'll bring with them to those who await him. So
that's correct.
Kind of a fascinating thing. So I wonder what other Bibles Christians read, because it seems to be overwhelming that this is the main emphasis of the New Testament is Christ, his person, his work, and his coming.
Amen.
So, Jacob, real quick, we got to update everyone. Just a few announcements before we get started on the events of the world. Is you're on podcast. A lot of people know you're on podcast. A lot of people don't know you're on podcast. Get to the podcast. Download these audios. Are amazing stuff, good stuff. And Jacob, you have First and Thessalonians coming up. First and Second Thessalonians coming up on podcast. Incredible stuff. Those two letters, those two epistles are amazing. If you're going to understand these days, these two letters. It's a must. It's a must for Christians to get it under their belt.
The two epistles that explain the Olivet Discourse the most, that explain Matthew 24, Luke 21, Mark 13, etc. the most, are First and Second Thessalonians. It's the primary theme and purpose of those epistles is to explain the return of Christ. So we have that series, yes.
Yeah, it's coming. So if you want to get a hold of the podcast, all the information, it's in the about page of this channel on Memorial TV. You can get to those platforms, and Jacob is there, First and Second Thessalonians. Plus, we have some studies on the resurrection. They're putting some of our studies from Community Church of Devore on the resurrection, Christ the Passover, he is risen, and the resurrection coming up, especially because we just entered into Passover season. It's the month of Nisan coming up. So if people want to get to the podcast, they just have to go to the About page of this channel, look at all the platforms Jacob is on, from Odyssey to Rumble to RTN and all that stuff, plus the podcast, which is on Buzzsprouts, and it's also on different platforms as well that are available there. You can click on it and you can find those things. So avail yourself of those. First and Second Thessalonians coming up, studies on the resurrection coming up. Jacob, I think that's all we have for the announcements. Let's get started. Yes, it is.
Let's also be watchful for the Obama Gilead. It will be published this week. It's published this next coming week, the first week of the Hebrew New Year. It'll be it's basically a Passover publication. It'll be coming out for the first week of the Jewish New Year. So it's the real Shana Tova to our Hebrew-speaking friends. Happy New Year. According to the Torah, the Jewish New Year begins tomorrow. Today is April Fool's Day in the West, but in the Torah, tomorrow is the beginning of the new year.
Fascinating stuff. Is it? So Nisan, first of Nisan's tomorrow. It's the beginning of the religious calendar according to the Torah. It's Passover season, but the rest of the world is April 1st. And Jacob, there's a lot of fools out there, and there's a lot of fools that say in their heart that there is no God. And boy, is that prevalent today. Let's get started, Jacob.
Ready.
Speaking of the Fool's Day, and by tomorrow, people will know more about it now. Jacob, you are familiar with the book by Christian Andersen. It's Emperor Has No Clothes. Hans Christian Andersen.
Yes.
Emperor Has No Clothes. Would you say that is a very good depiction of Mr. Biden and his free falling from his presidency? It is in free fall. People are leaving. The rats are leaving the ship. But you're familiar with the book. I'm sure you know Hans Christian Andersen and some of the writings that he's had.
I didn't go in, but I've stood in front of his house once in Copenhagen near Tivoli. And I suspect he actually may have been a Christian. I'm not sure. But he seemed like he could have been. Quite a figure, quite a character. He's the kingpin of Danish literature, actually. But his fairy tales have a meaning. Not only Hansel and Gretel, but certainly the emperor has no clothes. And that is what we're seeing now. The open buffoonery of a half-senile leader who everybody knows his ship is sinking. Everybody knows he's discredited. Everybody knows he doesn't know what he's doing. Everybody knows he's confused on what he's saying. Everybody knows except him. And he has a press secretary named Psaki who has to pander to him and try to pretend that he's actually in control of the Oval Office when he's not even in control of his next sentence half the time.
Yeah, and she's leaving. She's leaving as press secretary. She's going to MSNBC. Like I said, people are leaving the White House. They're leaving the state. She's not she's the first one, I guess you could say, major figures. Others will follow, according to reports. Jacob, are people starting to notice and talk about the mainstream news, perhaps, and people in general? Are they seeing that the emperor really has no clothes? You got the laptop situation now that even the media, CNN of all people, are saying it's true. It is what it is. And Hunter Biden did all these things and Joe's implicated. What a mess.
I think the American left is in disarray because its own stupidity and corruption has caught up with it. There is a terror, not of a red wave in the elections in November, but a red tsunami in both the House and Senate, which will essentially castrate what's left of the Biden presidency. He can only rule by fiat, by executive order. He won't be able to get any legislation or any major appointments through Congress. They know that. Members of the House and so forth and Senate are worried about losing their elections, losing their seats. The rats are fleeing. Now, there's always going to be enough rats to follow the Pied Piper to their death. There'll always be enough rats that will drown, that will follow the Pied Piper to their death. There's people who are going to support Biden, support Obama, Joe Obama, support those policies. And let's not forget what we're talking about here is a third Obama administration. Biden is nothing but a figurehead. He's a joke. He's not making the decisions. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's a joke. He's not making the decisions. It's the Obama administration's third term. It's working through Susan Rice and through a lot of other people who were in the Obama administration, some on the sidelines, some in the White House. Susan Rice being a pivotal one who's being understated in the importance that she has in the administration. She's a linchpin between Obama and Biden. And people know it's sinking. People know it's sinking. And when it begins to sink, it becomes every man for himself. Okay, so that's what they're doing.
Yeah, he's been called a national security risk. Everyone's upset. Cognitive decline, especially from the Republicans. He has gone onto media when he went to in front of media, and he went to Europe. He called Putin very, very terrible names, the butcher, this, and he's going to respond with a like response, which is it was basically biological warfare. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power. I wonder if he was talking to himself and a lot of these things, but he's lost control of this presidency. Jacob, you think they're done with him? Is this exit pretty imminent? It seems to be that when the media turns on you and the State Department begins to turn on you with no confidence, it really seems to be a Nixon thing.
Definitely the State Department bureaucracy, which is entrenched. But let's begin with the media. The media has become a victim of its own corruption and lies, not just declining circulation of its periodicals and publications. That's been steady. They've tried to reinvent themselves on internet. But if you look at the viewership figures of CNN and MSNBC, their ratings are absolutely unsalvageably deplorable. Right. Finally, Zucker was fired. He was thrown overboard. They're in trouble. They're simply in trouble financially. That's what's happening. And there's nothing they can do about it. So they're in a situation where desperate people do desperate things. They know Biden is dragging them down, and so they will turn on him. The establishment is out to protect the establishment. And if it's convenient to get rid of Biden, they'll turn on Biden. But what do you have as an alternative? Somebody who is commensurately unqualified for the job of being president. She was only appointed because of her gender and her race to be vice president, Kamala Harris. This is an absurd situation. That's what the country's in. And who do I blame? I blame the foolish, ignorant people who voted for him. You went from the highest Afro-American, highest Afro-American employment rate to what you have now. And it's going to become worse when these illegal immigrants begin coming into the country after Title 42 is repealed. Get ready, Black America. You're going to get what you voted for, okay? Get ready, Jewish liberals. You're going to get what you voted for. He's basically helping Iran to position itself to strike Israel. Congratulations, Jewish liberals. You got what you voted for. They got what they voted for. The problem is the rest of us, the sane people, also suffer the ramifications. I don't care if people who voted for Biden are paying $6 a gallon at the pump. That's what you voted for. If you were that stupid, you've reached the fruit of your own stupidity. I don't care. I don't care, about your grocery bill, because that's what you voted for. My problem is the people who didn't vote for it, to say nothing of the fact it was a rigged election. Can't you see that the United States was energy independent, and now it's dependent, and Russia can to a degree call the shots in the global energy market because of Biden's policies?
They're doing it, yeah. So he gets on TV and he says, well, to avoid paying so much, you just get an electric vehicle. While he's running around in his car, he tells everybody get an electric vehicle. Jacob, electric vehicles are gone through the roof. I mean, you can't afford $8 a gallon. You're not going to afford a $55,000 electric vehicle.
Not only that, but where does the energy come from?
Coal.
Coal. So I mean, again, I point to two things that they don't want, or actually three things that the left does not want you to look at. And that senator from Massachusetts, what's his name? The male, not Warren, the other one. What an absurd man. And Alexandra Ortega-Cortez saying green energy is a solution. Yeah. The first thing I'd point to is Germany went to 85%, 88% even renewables. Yeah. And energy prices and utility prices went through the ceiling. Plus, it didn't work. Carbon emissions increased. The sun does not always shine. The wind does not always blow. It's been tried and it failed. So you're trying to get something that failed. That's not to say there cannot be a place for solar or a place for wind-driven propulsion, wind propulsion that generated energy. Let's say there may be a place, but it's not going to be in place of fossil fuels at the present time. It's just not going to happen. It's been tried and failed. They want something that failed. Second thing, global warming is global. The United States energy production has much, much less byproduct carbon emission than Russia. They're burning off 15% of their natural gas. The United States burns off less than 1%. Our technology is much, much better. They're increasing global warming. Third thing they don't want you to know, that the Soviet Union always took a long term. Putin came from the KGB. He has that mentality. Russian intelligence was supportive of the green movement in the West in order to drive up the value of Russian oil and natural gas and make the West more reliant on it. Those are three things the idiotic, moronic left do not want to face. And the absurdity of it. You approve a pipeline under the Baltic for Russia, but you don't let the XL pipeline that would give 900,000 barrels of oil a day to the United States from Canada. You don't want that one, but you let Russia build the pipeline. This is how corrupt and how stupid. Now, it is possible that Biden himself is actually that stupid, and Harris is actually that lacking that intelligence. They may be people. There may be people of relatively low intelligence. I accept that. But there's got to be other people around them who know what they're doing. They can't all be that stupid. It must be contrived.
Yeah, intentional economic decline, like my friend says, an IED.
Now we want to have Alexandra Ortega-Cortez mouths off. She obviously doesn't know what she's talking about. She's a mindless babbler. She has verbal dysentery. She doesn't know what she's saying. She says stupid things. She's just this ridiculous woman. But they can't all be that thick.
Yeah, it's almost like God has given them over to a mind that it's completely darkened.
That's right.
A darkened mind, and God gives them over.
Bring up is something that happened in the days of Jeremiah before the Babylonian captivity. God gave them over. God just gave them over to something that would end in their destruction.
Yeah, absolutely. Jacob, when you have the head of the U.S. European Command, this is the head of the European Command in Europe, General Todd Walters, who says Biden's plan to stop Russia is an utter worthless failure. This is General Todd Walters calling the President of the United States plan an utter failure. There's something more amidst. You got the media, you got military, so it sounds more and more.
Now notice something. Notice something. When Miley called China during the election against Trump, Miley should have been relieved of his command and court-martialed, possibly for treason. I'm not sure of the legalities, but he certainly should have been relieved of his command and court-martialed for what he did to the commander-in-chief. Now you have generals doing it to Biden. And even Biden's own defense minister, who's not the sharpest knife in the drawer by any means, Austin, and Miley faulted Biden for what happened in Afghanistan, leaving those 13 Americans. All you would have needed was 3,500 Americans. This wouldn't have happened. But you got a commander-in-chief who's a senile, absolute ridiculous person, totally unqualified, and a vice president less qualified than he is. The military is now going against Biden the way the deep state and military went against Trump.
Yeah.
That tells you something.
It does. Jacob, I remember you telling me when Nixon was no longer under control, and now he had some other things going on, and of course he was using antidepressants and of course alcohol and all of that, and they had to remove him. Now in this situation, it's not quite that way, but you see the same wind blowing. You see the media talking openly about the laptop that implicates his son with Ukrainians, Chinese, Russian, Burisma, funding biolabs in Ukraine, saying his dad was complicit in it.
The big man.
It just doesn't seem to add up if they're going to keep Biden in place.
Notice they keep referring in the emails to the big man, but don't identify him. And mainstream media saying there's no evidence it's Biden. Well, who on earth is it if it's not Joe Obama Biden? It may be circumstantial, but it's not highly circumstantial. Again, I believe there should be an indictment of Brennan and Clapper and these other people from the intelligence community who said the whole thing was a setup by Russia. They obviously are people who need to be indicted. I think they should be put on trial. I'd like to see Brennan and Clapper die in federal prison. I really would. But
investigation is open now. Let's see what I mean.
Yep. I pray to God that he raises his hand against them and justice prevails. But let's look at this now. The media is being forced to report something that they played down for political reasons before the election.
Right.
Now they cannot ignore it in the same way they once did. You've got the defense establishment beginning to turn against Biden, but they have no alternative to Biden.
Ooh.
It's a definite crisis. I point out once again with the nuclear talk of Putin and Biden's response when he went to Poland. When that happened with Khrushchev in New York when I was a kid, immediately the Politburo, the Soviet establishment, got rid of Khrushchev. He was gone in a matter of months. The plan to get rid of him was underway by the time he got back to the Kremlin. He was on his way out.
Wow.
When Nixon called the Stage 3 alert and tried to exploit the Yom Kippur War for his purposes during Watergate to save his neck, not that I opposed his airlift to help Israel, but he called the Stage 3 nuclear alert with the Soviets. Again, the Republican Party leadership, the most conservative Republicans like Barry Goldwater said, look, you got to get it, knew they had to get rid of him. Well, is that happening now? Are there enough sane people saying we've got to get rid of Biden? What really troubles me, though, is the Russians got rid of Putin. Got rid of Khrushchev. Will they get rid of Putin? That is the other problem. And you don't have a commander-in-chief who's capable of dealing with Putin. Putin is not as bright as he thinks in certain respects, but in other respects, he can be quite clever. And he's a far better chess player than Biden.
No, that is absolutely true. Jacob, is speaking of that, because the other side, he's failed on the Biden's has failed economic policies in domestically. He's failed to stop the invasion in Ukraine. He's also failed internationally with the economic situation with Russia. I wanted to ask you about it wasn't a bluff. As of today, you want to buy gas and you want to buy petroleum and natural gas from Russia, you got to use rubles or you got to use Bitcoin. And it was announced that they're backing the ruble with gold, and they announced it a couple of days ago. They have a floor price now for gold, which is $52, 5,000 rubles, $52 per gram. So now you have a floor price for gold. You want to buy gas, you got to go through the ruble, or I imagine you could trade gold for it. Of course, they will welcome you to do it. His plan, Russia's plan, it wasn't a bluff. What was a mistake was completely the mishap of Biden administration as well as the European leaders.
But when you put that together with the Saudi concordant with China to price oil exports in yuan, you see that they're trying to dismantle the euro dollar as the basis of world currency reserves. They're trying to destroy the petrodollar, and Biden is again assisting them to do it. If the United States was at full production, or even at the level of production, and it's never reached full production, but it was at the level of production that Biden inherited from Donald Trump, this wouldn't be happening. This would not be happening because the United States would be too big of a player in the oil market globally, and certainly in the liquid gas, natural gas market. They wouldn't be able to do this. The only reason they're able to do it is because of Biden and the left.
Yeah, absolutely.
People don't understand the ramifications. What would happen if the US dollar was not the world currency reserve anymore? People don't understand the ramifications.
This is huge. Jacob, you've talked about Nixon taking the gold standard out, take the dollar out of the gold standard, then replacing it a couple of years later with the petrodollar. And that's what sustained the Western economy, the United States, for the past 30, 40 years, more than that. Now we're shifting. Now there's a shift between East and West, and now the West seems to have no backing of their currency. It's been fiat money, the printing of the obsession with printing by our State Department, by the Treasury, and by our government, and we're in deep trouble here.
And in the new budget, they want much more.
Yeah, 15 trillion more.
Can you understand? Barack Obama has two religions. His first religion growing up in Indonesia was Islam. He's made references to his Islamic faith, which hates the infidel, hates Christians, hates Israel. So he demonstrates Islamic thinking in his policies. But secondly, he, for political reasons, joined a liberation theology church, a racist church, where they had Farrakhan speaking. Now, can you imagine if a white Republican candidate was in a church, was a member of a church, and paid $500 a week contribution to a church that had David Duke speak at it? But the media gives Obama a pass for that Jeremiah Wright guy, who's teaching, who preached. And Barack Obama's church preached from the pulpit, God damn America. That is the religion of Barack Obama. God damn America. He did everything he could in his first term, leading from behind, the apology tour, giving the internet over to the United Nations. That was ours and we paid for its development. It belonged to the American taxpayer and he gave it away. This was Obama. He did everything he could to damn our country and to betray Israel. Everything he could. Everything. Well, now you have a third Obama administration, the Joe Obama administration, and they're trying to damn the country. They have a religious agenda. There's a religious agenda on back of the thinking of Barack Obama. And Biden is simply a sock puppet.
Yeah.
And his son now wanted that.
Yeah, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, is warning. This is directly from them, warning the U.S. because of Biden's sanctions is going to threaten both Europe and America because of their policies. Now, the IMF is no saint, but they've even saying, wait a minute, something's up here and it's not looking good. Whatever chess game you guys are playing, you guys are losing.
When France, Germany, Italy, and India, not to mention China, are still buying Russian oil and now paying for it in rubles.
Yeah.
What has it done other than drive the price of Russian oil up in the United States. Now, I'm not against the embargo on Russian oil as long as you let us drill for our own.
But they're not. Now, the Vatican.
There's a simple solution. There's a way to fight back with liquid gas. The United States can say, we're going to bring liquid gas from the United States into Europe. Your future dependency on Russian oil, it's over. We can do this within a few years. We can supply Europe with all the gas it needs. There's a simple solution to it.
Now, do you remember Jacob Trump tried to warn them? They laughed at him and he says, look, the guy who owns the outlet to your plug is Russia. He could just take it off. What are you letting them have the plug?
That's correct.
They laughed at him. Now Europe is going.
Well, Merkel was a mental degenerate, and Macron is no better. This is continental Europe. Thank God Britain pulled out with Brexit.
Yeah, I mean it's an awful prospect.
Total, the French oil company Total says it's still buying Russian oil. They're funding the invasion of Ukraine. They are funding it. They are saving the ruble.
It is the funniest thing to see Europe say, no, Russia, you can't invade. Here's some money. Here's some more money for the oil. Well, Austria has come out, Prime Minister of Austria say, well, what do you expect us to do? We have to keep buying oil from Russia. We're not going to let our people suffer. This is the attitude of a lot of European nations. So there's no cohesion. There's no agreement. IMF says you're in trouble. Russia's winning this game. What do you expect to happen? Prices through the roof. Jacob, you're telling me a little bit about prices in Europe, prices in other places in the US, but in Europe, it just went astronomically high.
Astronomically high. In Great Britain, the energy prices are out of control.
Yeah.
What Biden is also doing, before the election, he's trying to bring down oil prices because of the impact politically and electorally on the high prices. So he is basically pilfering the emergency oil reserves. What happens if there's a major hurricane? Another, like Janine or one of those major hurricanes hits the Gulf Coast again. Where's the reserves going to come from? Where's the oil going to come from? Canada? You can't get enough from Canada because of the XL pipeline that you didn't allow to be built. That would have been operational already. Where are you going to get it? He's put the country at ultra high risk. And there's a lot of stupid people who are too stupid to know it. They're called Democrats. And I'm not a Republican.
Jacob, to overcomplicate things even more, it's Germans' rationale here. They didn't want to be energy independent a few years ago. They're planning now to nationalize subsidiaries of Gazprom and Rosneft, which are Russian companies within operated Germany, nationalize them and basically take their assets, which is oil and gas. These are Russian companies. I mean, this is a desperate move to try to nationalize your oil and natural gas by taking oil and natural gas from the country in which you're getting it from, which is Russia. That is just going to overcomplicate things politically in the middle of a war. I don't even know what to think about Germany in this situation.
The United States should have listened to Billy Mitchell concerning Japan. The United States and Great Britain should have listened to Winston Churchill concerning Hitler.
Yeah.
There was a time you could have stopped them. It didn't have to happen. If Steve Emerson had been listened to by Bush, September 11th didn't have to happen. But Bush didn't listen. They never listen to the people who tell the truth. Steve Emerson tried to warn the American government. Billy Mitchell tried to warn the American government. Churchill tried to warn the American and British government. Well, Donald Trump tried to warn Congress and tried to warn the European Union what was going to happen. And they didn't listen to him either. So they're going to reap the fruit of their own stupidity. But it didn't have to happen.
Yeah. To complicate things more, in Mariupol, they shot down 2 Ukrainian helicopters with, get this, Jacob, French intelligence, American advisors, military advisors, British military advisors. They're in Mariupol right now. The Russians know about this. They're very upset that you have now basically military advisors. They entered into Sweden's airspace this week.
Yes.
With nukes.
Violated Sweden's airspace with nuclear-armed aircraft.
Yeah. And Sweden's reporting this. You can't even say it's Russian misinformation. Sweden's reporting it. They're very concerned.
This is nuclear saber rattling, isn't it?
That's right. Now, the State Department, the U.S. State Department, again, issued a warning. Get out of Ukraine. Americans, get out of Ukraine, get out of Russia. I guess putting two and two together, what Germany's doing with their nationalizing their gas and oil, plus what's going on in Mariupol. I don't know, Jacob, you tell me. It's a powder keg ready to go off again? I mean, this doesn't seem like it's de-escalating.
Let's go back to what it's always been, the status quo. Germany and other countries in Europe said, let us trade with Russia, let us trade with anybody we want. America spends more for Europe's defense than Europeans do. Americans put a higher percentage of their GDP into defense than we do, and they spend more money on defending Europe than Europeans do. These are affluent countries. Well, it's not working anymore. So they're in trouble.
Not only they know that, IMF knows that, but Putin knows that. And of course, he's warning, and this may be sort of a rub it in your face to the leader. Warning.
Sorry to interrupt. You said some of the passengers traveling on the helicopters were French intelligence.
Yes.
The French don't have any intelligence, so they wouldn't vote for people like Macron.
Oh, I know. By the way, Jacob, this goes into that. Putin's warning about energy crisis and food crisis in Europe and America. And if you ever wanted to know if it's true or not, Macron and his government are giving out food vouchers to French citizens because they can't afford food anymore. It is astronomical, the price here. We're in so much trouble. Jacob, I want you to comment on it. The economic position that the U.S. is in because the dollar is unstable, the euro is unstable, food vouchers, prices through the roof, fertilizer prices through the roof. You got chickens dying in America, 17 million chickens and turkeys dying because of the flu. So it's in Europe. It just seems to compile a bad situation worse.
These things are God's judgments. But people are not judged simply for their sin, but by them. Much of what is happening with the supply chain, with the price of fertilizer, with the price of oil, it need not happen. Now, you're going to get a bird flu. Okay, things like that happen periodically.
Correct.
But when it happens in conjunction with all these other things, tell me that the horsemen of Revelation 6 are not mounting up. I'm not saying it's it, but
they're galloping. Yeah. Oh man. UN today, world facing food shortages. He says, well, while the West may be hit pretty hard, it says the real problem is the poor countries who were getting the food. Now they're not. And where are they going to get it from if other countries are not able to provide?
Yep.
The UN admits is a big problem. It's a world problem.
Yep.
But Jacob, at the same time, I think the answer, and I'm being facetious, the World Government Summit 2022 in Dubai, that just happened this past week. They have the answer. You heard Klaus Schwab saying, yep, there's going to be a lot of pain. There's going to be a lot of problems in supply chain, oil, energy, food, but we're going to have the solution. What's their solution? World government. In fact, they introduced the whole thing as welcome to the new world order, which I know people think it's a conspiracy, and they even have Wikipedia links on some of our videos. But nonetheless, they headline all this saying, this is it. Welcome to the new world order.
My mother's family is Irish. My mother was Irish Catholic, staunchly. Unfortunately, not unfortunately Irish, but unfortunately Catholic. Which, as we know, Roman Catholicism is a form of mental illness, but that's not a subject tonight. And we have 40 million Irish Americans, 40 million. You also have very large Irish Canadian population, particularly in the eastern provinces, and a significant Irish population in Australia. Diasporic Irish population that's very large, and not least of all, in Britain. 7 out of 10 families in Liverpool, England, Merseyside, are Irish Catholic descent, ethnically Irish. Glasgow is 1/3 Irish Catholic descent. Manchester, England, 25% of the people in Greater Manchester are of Irish Catholic descent. Now, where did all these Irish people in New York and Boston and Chicago and Liverpool and Glasgow, where do they come from? Well, how did they get there? It's called the potato famine. At that time, Ireland was a colony of Britain, and the policies of the British government during a potato blight made the problem worse. Things they tried to do did nothing to solve the problem and actually aggravated it. So the people had to flee. What you're going to see is the same thing. These policies of the World Economic Forum are going to be like the Irish potato famine. You're going to see a massive exflux of people from the third world coming into the developed world. Wow. That is what it's going to be. It's going to be like the Irish potato famine. Stupid politicians with programs and policies that not only don't work, but make the problem worse, resulting in a massive, massive emigration of people trying to come into your country.
Yeah, I mean, I was chatting with you earlier before the recording. There's a huge immigration policy that's coming from the World Economic Forum. They're talking about a global new order in which immigration is like a global citizen. You could just cross borders without any issues. And of course, this is being taken advantage because of the Ukrainian situation. Jacob, you might just find this funny. It's not as funny, but it is comical. It's to say Ukrainians have changed the way they look. I mean, people are going into Germany, Canada. Yes. And you expect Ukrainians to look a certain way, not look North Africans. And somebody's making
Arab and Muslim. Yep, that's right.
Somebody's making
right.
Yeah.
It's all corrupt. And something else happens. Something else happens that people don't take into consideration. Okay. In the United States, you haven't seen it to the same degree because Hispanic immigrants tend after one generation to anglicize. I had a lot of friends growing up in New York whose parents spoke Puerto Rican. They would answer their parents in English, but the parents would speak Spanish to them. I had Puerto Rican friends in New York that I could speak better Spanish than they could, and I was a gringo. I was an Anglo. You know what I mean? Okay, there's a high rate of, because Hispanics are European, the same as American, same as British and Celtic and French Americans, they're of European descent. They can integrate quickly and become part of the mainstream. This is one of the things that's driving the Democrats crazy. More and more Hispanics are moving to the political right, or at least right center, because they become upwardly mobile, because you're getting to the point where people are up. They're not able to say that Hispanic Americans, Los Pochos, are a minority anymore. You saw this with that Trayvon, whatever it was, that Trayvon thing.
Yeah, Trayvon Martin. Yeah,
the guy who killed him, I'm not saying murdered him, but who killed him was a Hispanic. But they said he's a white Hispanic. You see what I'm saying? So they need immigrants to be minorities. They have to bring these other Hispanics in to take the place of the upwardly mobile Hispanic Americans. It's a different thing. But what happened after the potato famine? Huge families, religious conflict from Britain came with them, and the Irish fought political battles and established organized political corruption in America. And again, my mother's family is Irish. I'm not anti-Irish, but it was the Kennedy machine in Boston, Frank Hague in New Jersey, and Tammany Hall in New York, and the Daily Machine in Chicago. Cook County is still the most crooked political machine in the United States. Okay, it goes back to this thing. We had a mass influx of Irish immigrants after the potato famine. Okay, and they all came in. Now, a lot of them fought in the Civil War for both sides, and they got accepted pretty quick. But it was a political battle. America had always been white Anglo-Saxon Protestant up until then. You know, now it's different. Okay. Well, it's happening now. You're going to have, it's happening already in Britain. It's happening in France. People wanting Sharia. The mayor of London is a Muslim.
Yeah.
And he's a lousy mayor. And he says, we have to accept terror as a part of everyday life. This is what the mayor of London says. You're going to have a political fallout as a result of this coming immigration. Just look, if somebody wants to know what happened, read the Irish potato famine. Read what happened and the ramifications it had for other countries.
Very true, Jacob. One of the things that Biden's been talking about is Title 42. Take that out.
Yeah.
And allow this massive, and what's at the border are not Ukrainians, naturally born Ukrainians. They look very different. And now he's providing a smartphone app to get everybody checked in. As soon as May 23rd comes along and it's not, the Title 42 is completely dropped, it's going to be a massive move in the U.S., which is going to compound what's already happening here.
You know, these leaders who do this, I just think of King Zedekiah, the last king before the Babylonian captivity. His eyes were torn out of his head, and he was dragged to Babylon in chains. I do believe God's judgment is going to come upon these corrupt politicians, and they're going to be the victims of what they imported. That's what's going to happen. They're already blind. Their eyes are being torn out. They can't see.
Yeah.
And they're becoming enchained. They have no way out of this.
Yeah, there isn't a way out of it. It's really, everything has backfire. I mean, speaking of another book, he's not King Midas. Everything Biden has touched has not turned to gold, has turned into a disaster.
He's also like the Shakespearean character, King Lear, an old man losing his mind.
Jacob, but we're also in so much trouble because the sexualization of children in the West, that's Europe, that's America. Here in America, we have a governor in Florida who's trying to protect kids. He says, you're not going to sexualize our kids in Florida. Bill 1557, who erroneously has been attacked by the left, calling it the Don't Say Gay bill. It is so bad. The left has come out of nowhere, including Disney. I want you to get your comments on that, Jacob. We watched that Zoom meeting with Disney executives talking about their agendas to sexualize kids through their channels. No doubt, they're angry at Florida. They're angry at the governor because they're not allowed to sexualize children anymore. This is a bizarre turn of events.
When you have a situation where, with taxpayer money in schools owned by taxpaying citizens, parents are forced to have their children subjugated to indoctrination by homosexuals, lesbians, transgender people as part of the curriculum they're paying for in schools they own to their children. But reversion therapy, even pastoral counseling,
right,
is being outlawed. You have to let us put this and teach this to your children, but if your child displays any orientation towards it, you're not allowed to
tell your kids, yeah,
to return to a heterosexual orientation. This is just satanic. I point people to our teaching tape that I did the first one more than 10 years ago. Not even a minyan. Not even a minyan.
That's right.
Please listen to it. The story of Lot and how homosexuality is going to become more aggressive and more demanding. It can't be placated. And there's a demonic spirit in the back of it, and it's going to bring God's judgment. But let's look at this. I watched the film clip by the Hollywood actor Ron Perlman. And he used filthy, disgusting vulgarity, referring to people who supported this parents' rights law as pieces of excrement. Only he didn't say excrement. He's just a vulgar man. And he appealed to the Constitution. You can't say gay to children, to gay. Read the First Amendment, freedom of speech. Okay. The majority of tax-paying voting citizens in that state did not want that being taught to children from ages 5 through 7 or 4 through 7. The majority. That's democracy. And the majority of parents with children that age didn't want their children being taught it. They don't have, the majority has no rights. The Hollywood homosexuals have a right to impose it.
Unreal.
This is not Walt Disney's Disney.
No.
This is something evil. This is evil. What, the taxpayers, a majority of the voting taxpayers don't have rights? A majority of parents don't have rights as to what their children are taught in the area of sexual morality? And they demand the right to do it to your children, and you pay for it? And if you don't, you're a homophobe?
Yeah.
They're making people homophobes.
Yeah, absolutely. Disney on their talks, this is from executives. It's not low-level management, executives. They call it the not at all secret gay agenda. The not at all secret gay agenda, flooding shows with in their own words, LGBTQIA characters in their shows purposely to influence children. And they're angry at Governor DeSantis in Florida for bringing out this law. Jacob, and I got to tell you, as crazy as Disney is, I read the law, I read the bill. It's not even that.
Doesn't go far enough. It doesn't go far enough. Yes.
Actually allows teachers to talk to individual children about it, but they're not allowed to openly teach it in a classroom setting, but they can still talk to the children. And I'm wondering, if this is curriculum transparency, why is the left and the sexualization of kids, why are they so angry about this if it doesn't even go far enough? It's like it will never be clean.
Schools have no right to teach anything about sex other than biology.
Yeah.
And that should be age appropriate.
Yeah.
Up until the age of 18, a child's education should be the primary responsibility of their parents. There should be a parental control in terms of any moral content in the curriculum. The majority of the people want this. The majority of voters want it. Yeah. What we're seeing is an attack on democracy. It's much the same as the attack on free speech on the internet and the censorship. It's much like and that's getting big in Europe. The government wants to monitor everything. Yeah. And it's much like the attack on the Second Amendment. What we're seeing here is an attack on the Constitution itself.
Yeah. Jacob, in England, we were talking earlier about the ban, the conversion therapy ban. First, the UK government said they were going to stop the ban. Then they're going to put it, and then they put it back on, and now they're saying it's going to go ahead. The conversion ban, the conversion therapy ban, is going to go ahead, even though they said, well, maybe they'll listen to maybe Christian pastors and leaders. Forget that idea. They're going full throttle on the conversion therapy ban in the UK.
Well, you know, when Proposition 8 was passed in California, a Republican judge nominated by Ronald Reagan and appointed by George Bush. And remember, the establishment Republicans are no better than Democrats. This judge was a homosexual himself. He should have been recused. But he wrote a decision. And in his decision, it actually states, I've read it, that Christianity and biblical values are responsible for much of homophobia, and that the rights of homosexuals exceed the rights of religious conviction, with no constitutional basis for it.
Wow.
And reversed a vote, even in a very liberal state like California, because most Hispanics are either Catholic, some are Pentecostal, still have conservative family values.
Right.
So Proposition 8 passed largely because of Hispanics and the more conservative enclaves in Orange County and places like that. But it passed, and it was just reversed by one corrupt judge who's going to hell, a homosexual who will spend eternity in the lake of fire with a stroke of a pen. Again, Jesus said to be brought before magistrates. These people want to rule from the bench and suspend any kind of legislative superiority. Yeah. They want to replace elected legislative government with super legislating by a corrupt judiciary. That's what they want to do. Again, it's part of the attack on the Constitution.
That's right.
Attacking the Supreme Court is another aspect of the same thing.
Yeah, and let me get to the Supreme Court in a minute, Jacob, because I wanted to ask you also, the attack on children is obviously evident. Ban conversion therapy, not only in the UK, United States, Canada, but also there's this wild bill in Maryland. We talked about 669 already, but what about the bill in California, 2223, which basically does the same, prohibits criminalization of perinatal 1 month after birth death. So this is an abortion, basically an abortionist's dream. You can actually cause an abortion or something along the lines of 28 days or 30 days after the baby's born. You can decide, and there'll be no criminalization of it if the baby dies, if the baby's killed. This is absurd. This is, again, 669, 2223 now, attack on children. It goes right along with the judgment of God that you've been talking about.
Postpartum abortion, Moloch worship, killing babies, legalized. And you can't prosecute either the killers or the parents who want them killed. This is what it's going to. This is just Moloch worship. This is what brought the judgment of God on Judah in the days of Jeremiah. It's exactly what brought the judgment of God. And they went to Babylon. Well, the Western world is heading to Babylon the Great. Postpartum abortion, murdering babies. Better a millstone tied around your neck than to hurt a little one. Those people would be better to have a millstone tied around their neck, taken to the end of a deep water pier and thrown off and drowned. That they would be better off
than to face,
than to doing what they're doing and face the eternal consequences in the lake of fire. They will burn forever.
You have a Supreme Court nominee who, by all looks of it, the Republicans may be backing it, Lindsey Graham, among others.
Lindsey Graham not, but Collins, yes.
Collins, sorry. Ketanji Jackson, she is a sentence, basically her sentence toward child pornography, which I have to clarify it, since pornography is so allowed in the United States, is so welcomed by a lot of people. They don't think pornographic materials is anything anymore. We have to clarify. Child pornography is child rape and an evil attack on children and abuse. That's what it has to be called. So Ketanji Brown Jackson, nearly 60% of her cases sentenced lower than the national average. She actually has sympathy for those who traffic material of child rape.
Can you imagine under sentencing people who financially profit from the production and commercial distribution or dark web distribution of children being forcibly raped? This woman this wicked racist woman. She's a racist and she's wicked. She is, first of all, judicially unqualified to even be a judge, much less a Supreme Court justice, because of the amount, the proportion of her decisions that were overturned by higher courts prove she is not judicially qualified.
Exactly.
Anybody who does not know the definition of a woman is not intellectually qualified. Anybody who evades basic questions on policy by the House Judiciary Committee and by the Senate Judiciary Committee concerning her policies and positions on issues she's likely to have to decide upon.
Absolutely.
Is not ethically qualified. She's just a sneak.
Yeah. When does life begin? She doesn't know.
I don't know. Yeah, she's just a sneak. Fourthly, she's obviously in the area of undersentencing of pedophiles, of pandering to the sickest of crimes. She's morally unqualified. You have a woman who is judicially unqualified, who is intellectually unqualified, who is ethically unqualified, and certainly morally unqualified. But Susan Collins is going to vote for her.
Unbelievable. Jacob, she's the leftist dream. She's the Wilsonian dream of these judges who are not elected by the people and yet usurp the authority of Congress, because Congress is worthless. And they make their own laws. And even if there's laws passed, they reinterpret them and put their own.
That's correct. That's what she believes. She's an agendaist judge. She believes the laws can be reinterpreted by the court to mean what the court wants it to mean. Well, now, as I point out, that judicial philosophy that ridiculous woman has is how we got the Dred Scott decision. That exact kind of judicial legislation from the bench is what said she was 3/5 human. She was 3/5 of a human being. You're simply a monkey with better DNA. That's what the Supreme Court said in the Dred Scott decision to black people. You're nothing but a monkey with better DNA. You're subhuman.
Yeah, that was
the ramification of the Dred Scott decision, because in the southern states, they were considered 60% human. Plantation owners could vote 3/5 of their slaves for the candidates of their choice. That was one of the things that precipitated the Civil War.
Yeah, that's right.
They said that blacks were 3/5 of a human being. They're only 60% human. That's what they said. Now, she is in favor of that same judicial philosophy that dehumanized blacks. They dehumanized embryos. Well, nearly 70% of the aborted embryos are black. This woman is wicked and stupid. But you know who else is wicked and stupid? The people who defend her, who would vote for her. Yeah. They tried to make it a race. Oh, if you're against her just because she's black, you're a racist. Well, forget about the fact that she's a racist. You're a racist. No, those same people on the left want to get rid of a black Supreme Court Justice, Clarence Thomas, who's a black man. Yeah. We can do it, but you can't.
Yeah.
What the left does is this. If you oppose them politically concerning a black person, you're a racist. However, if you have a black conservative, the Democrats get dressed up in their traditional garb. They put a white sheet over their head and grab a rope. That's the party of Jim Crow and of slavery. The Democrats just put on their old uniform. They just put a white sheet over their head and grab a rope. They'll go after Clarence Thomas and then call you a racist for standing up to a woman who is debaucherous.
Yeah.
Who's going to hell, most likely.
They went after Clarence Thomas, and this was the most ridiculous thing I heard. The left was so happy, and they said we're going to have our first African American court judge in the Supreme Court, which was quickly rebuttal because they say, wait, what about Clarence Thomas? They dismiss him. They don't consider him in any way an African American. They went after his wife, saying she's part of the coup. It's laughable.
A coup that never even existed.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what to say anymore sometimes because I think it's so far gone. I wonder if God's going to give America another chance to repent.
I don't know.
Yeah.
As I've always said, the most we can hope for is a delay and a Josiah revival that will delay the judgment of God. That's the only thing we can hope for. But one thing's for sure, if there's no revival, judgment is going to come. If there is a revival, judgment will be delayed. But the blood of the unborn, God could not forgive the sins of Judah under King Manasseh. And God will not be able to forgive the sins of the Western world for the same reason.
And I'm just appalled, Jacob, as many Christians, or they call themselves Christians. I don't know what to call them, whether they left the faith or they were never saved to begin with. It's both. That support Ketanji Brown, that support the leftist idea, support Disney, supports the school systems, and I'm going, what Bible are we not reading? What Bible are we not reading? And it's awful. Let's put it that way. It's awful. So I want to switch gears, Jacob, real quick to another awful thing. It's the wave of terrorism in Israel, in Jerusalem. You're quite aware of it. In Bnei Brak, there's the recent attack. There's 3 of them in the last week. They're increasing. Palestinian terrorists are saying that this is a harbinger of things to come because of Ramadan and the beginning of Passover season. They're attacking ultra-Orthodox Jews, Jewish areas. This is a big problem because I don't think we've seen the last of it. Several people have been killed already in a week. Deadly attacks. And we've seen what happened last year when they stormed the Temple Mount and they just rioted for a month straight. They started early, I would imagine. Jacob, what's your take on this?
If Israel defends itself, the world is going to condemn it as usual. The BBC, CNN, MSNBC, the Biden administration, they're going to condemn Israel. Left-wing American Jews will go along with the condemnation of Israel. They're going to condemn Israel. That's certainly what's going to happen. But Israel will have to defend itself at some point. There's something in Israel called Mishmar Ezrachi, and it's like neighborhood watch in the United States. It's like neighborhood watch. You just get ordinary people. Only in Israel, they don't call the police. They're all armed. And some of them are armed with automatic weapons.
Wow.
So what Israel's response is the Mishmar Ezrachi. Now, it's a defensive reaction, but eventually there's going to have to be an offensive one. Israel is going to have to be sending drones into Gaza and killing people who are responsible for this. And when that happens, there's always going to be collateral damage. Then the world's going to blame Israel for the collateral damage. I've seen this so many times. I recall one time I was in a place called Ramat Rachel, which overlooks Bethlehem. It's right on the border. Muslim terrorists went into the Church of the Nativity, where Christ was said to be born by the tradition of Eastern Orthodoxy and so forth. And they looted the church. Muslims were looting the church, holding the monks hostage. The monks were holding signs out the window, "Please rescue us," written in English and Arabic, I think, but in English. I was right there. I was talking to soldiers because the soldiers were coming into the place I was staying, and they were coming in there on their off hours to go to the gym facilities and things like that. So they were telling me what was going on in the city, and I was listening to what the soldiers were telling me. I'm looking out the window and I'm seeing the shooting around the steeple of the church, about a mile away, a little less than a mile, a kilometer away. I'm looking at the shooting, right? And I turn on CNN, and CNN says, the Israelis have Bethlehem under siege.
Oh, man.
They're trying to rescue the monks from a church, one of the holiest sites in Christendom, allegedly, being looted by radical Muslims, and Israel is conducting a siege. This was CNN. The next day, the stock of Time Warner, CNN, went through the basement for some reason, over 50 billion. How can they lose 50 billion? But they did. I think it was God's judgment on that terrible company. I hate CNN.
Well, yeah, they're losing it. And like I said, it's not a news organization, nothing but a sex club with all these people in there. But
yeah, they're all saturated with sex perverts.
Yeah.
You got that guy, Tubin, what's his name, Tubin?
Yeah, Tubin, Jeffrey Tubin, yeah.
You got a sexual deviant, a man who sits there in front of a camera at a meeting and he masturbates. He's a sex pervert. He's a sexual deviant, and that's what they've got.
Yeah, and he complains about the child pornography laws.
Yeah, he's complaining about the child. Yeah, what is he into it? I don't know. Yeah. What kind of an idiot is going to sit there and masturbate in front of women and down in front of a camera, and then go out and morally pontificate to other people that you're being too hard on child pornographers?
Jacob, you couldn't make this up. If we sat here and thought about how perverted things can be, we couldn't make this up. The deputy mayor of Jerusalem, just speaking of, Anthony Blinken has been, he's been parading through Jerusalem. He's been going around there, and of course the attacks have been going on. The deputy mayor of Jerusalem told him to get out of Jerusalem. He says, you're creating a bad feeling, you're creating provocations, you need to leave. I don't know if he left, but of course he had to go to another meeting. I thought that was pretty comical. You have Biden administration in Jerusalem while these attacks are going. But Biden's been very busy, Jacob. He's got his negotiators working with Russian negotiators, as you pointed out a couple of weeks ago. They're finalizing the nuclear deal. As Putin is invading Ukraine, they're finalizing the Iran deal.
Not only that, first of all, one of the cards Putin plays in media relations with his own people in Russia, on Russian television, is he says, look at the sexual perversion and homosexuality of the Western governments. I'm defending Christian values.
That's right.
That's what he's saying. Now, obviously, he's doing it for political propaganda reasons, but that's what he's saying. He's pointing out this child molesting and stuff. And he's saying, look, we're fighting to stop this.
Yeah.
Secondly, the insanity of having Russia negotiate on your behalf when you're not even in the room to try to get a deal out of a terrorist country committed to killing as many Americans as possible because you're the great Satan.
Yep.
And to destroying Israel and to destroying moderate Gulf states because they're Sunni, not Shia.
That's right.
You have Russia, Putin, at the same time you're complaining about what he's doing in Ukraine, negotiating with them on your behalf. As you say, you couldn't make this up.
No. Jacob, Russia's going to make billions, maybe trillions out of this deal because they get to build all the nuclear reactors. They get to build all the nuclear heads for Iran. They're basically are going to be arming them to destroy Israel at the behest of Joe Biden.
That's correct. Well, and Obama.
Yeah. But yet we're fighting Russia against Ukraine.
Yep.
At some point, people got to think, wait a minute.
No, people who vote for the Democratic Party don't think. They don't know how, they're too stupid. They don't think. Nobody who knows how to think would vote for somebody like Biden or Obama.
It is so illogical, Jacob. It's spiritual. I think the Prince of Persia is the one who negotiated the principality.
That's Daniel chapter 8, Daniel chapter 10.
Yeah.
The spiritual delusion. You're correct.
Oh my God. I couldn't. I don't know what to say. When it's so illogical, it's spiritual. And yet, because it's spiritual, majority, don't even see the writing on the wall.
Right.
That as you've been weighed wanting and you're going to be replaced. This is what's going to happen to Biden. You've been found wanting. You're going to be down. You're going to be destroyed. But Jacob, you got this Negev summit in which Blinken, believe it or not, was a part of it. This Negev summit came out of nowhere. Most people didn't see it coming, but the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, Egypt,
yes,
Israel, and Blinken attended to try to derail Iran's, I guess you could say, Iran's increase in power. And but yet Blinken is part of the group that is giving the Iran the okay. Again, please explain this to me.
You know what it reminds me of? The Sipes report said at any given time, 40% of Roman Catholic priests are sexually active in some way. Now that could be they got a nun on the side or something like that. I don't know, or prostitution or pedophilia. But the Sipes report said 40% who admit it. Who admit it? It's like Catholics going to confession and confessing their sin to a Catholic priest to get absolution, and then he goes out of the confessional, goes out and does the same thing. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. I molested a 5-year-old. Say 3 Hail Marys, will give you absolution. By the way, you got the phone number? That's what it comes. It's like that.
Yeah, talk about ultimate blackmail, right, Jake? I mean, I was a Catholic at once. Talk about the ultimate blackmail.
Yes.
You confess your sin, now they got you over a barrel.
That's right. That's right.
Crazy. Jacob, what's up with these Arab nations wanting this? I mean, is this such a threat?
They're afraid. The Sunni regimes are afraid of Iran.
Wow. I mean, Turkey wasn't in here, but Turkey's very concerned about all this.
Yeah, Turkey's afraid that these nations are being forced to make friends with Israel because of Iran. A matter of months ago, Erdogan was increasingly anti-Israel and increasingly pro-Islamic radicalism. Now he's having to soften up because his economy is in trouble, of course, but also because the other Sunni states, and Turkey is Sunni, are making alliances with Israel and business relations with Israel. Israelis are not stupid. They're saying, you want defense cooperation? Well, we also have to have economic cooperation. Remember, Israel has the Silicon Valley of the Middle East. It's the high-tech base of the Middle East and a high-tech economy, And now they've got the Leviathan oil field, which the value of it's going up again now because of what's happened.
Astronomical.
You've got to do business with us, okay? And Erdogan is being sidelined, or Erdogan is sidelined himself, and he's trying to get back in.
Jacob, Dubai is being propped up as this wonderful city, this wonderful place. I mean, I even heard Christians saying how wonderful it is to go there. But they're being propped up as this economic city that's going to be this city state that's going to be above the law. And the crazy thing about it, and it's not so far-fetched, the World Economic Forum as well as the summit, we're talking about creating the city states that are above any jurisdiction. These 10 cities they want to create all over the world. Dubai, as you mentioned, being one of them in our earlier conversation. I'm sure the Vatican wants to be a part of this.
Abu Dhabi is another one.
Yeah. What's up with this building up of these Babylons, as it were, all over the globe, 10 of them, without no jurisdiction, super high tech, super medically inducive. You've got to go there to get your stuff.
Don't forget, although the policies of the Chinese government is killing the goose that lays the golden eggs, Hong Kong had been that. A separate legal system, a special administrative region, not under China's legal system, right, but still China, and completely different trade policies than China. So much of the construction that you saw in Shanghai and Beijing and things like this, and Guangzhou, was funded from banks in Hong Kong. it was one of those. It was a city with a legal system of its own, not even accountable to China, because it was in the economic interest of China. Once they began to demand democracy, then they went too far, of course. Well, Abu Dhabi's, Dubai's the same. They'll allow a certain amount of freedom, but don't go too far. You know what I mean? And that freedom will not extend to the cheap Muslim labor they get from third world countries like Pakistan, who they pay these people 90 cents an hour for their work, and they work hard, and they sleep on the floor, all in the same room. They pay them 90 cents an hour sometimes. Wow. That's how Dubai was built, by what many people would call slave labor. Yeah, look, it's wonderful. They got the Palm and they got the Burj Al Arab, and they got one heck of an airport. And Emirates is a good airline, but the pilots are all German or Australian or something. You know, just like stewardesses or from New Zealand, but they're dressed like Arabs. It's you know, it is that. It is that. And Abu Dhabi is similar. Only Abu Dhabi is even wealthier than Dubai. Wow. Another one is Muscat in Oman. Just Dubai is the one that gets the most attention because of the skyscrapers, and they put the most into promoting it. But Saudi Arabia wants to build one opposite Sharm el-Sheikh on the Sinai Peninsula on the Saudi side. They want to build the biggest city in the world that will be Saudi, but not part of Saudi Arabia, legally, where it will not be governed by Sharia per se, except for Muslims.
This is a globalist dream. This is a globalist dream for cities.
And the Vatican has always been one. The Vatican Bank has always been a place to launder dirty money.
Now they're making deals with Russia, no doubt. So we're seeing the creation of these super states, Jacob. It's the East versus West. Who knows what it's going to eventually look like, but we know in Scripture we have these 10 kings who give power to the beast.
Yeah. So, look, they've always been around, like Gibraltar, Monte Carlo. They've always been around. But what we're talking about now is an ultra high-tech version of it.
Bingo. Or basically, you have no rights. It's only what they say it is. Otherwise, they ban you or you can't do business with them. Jacob, let's finish in a positive note, good note. We've been tracking the court case of Pavi Raznan, which is Finnish. She's from Finland. She's an MP. And she went to court because of hate speech. They charged her with hate speech because she said regarding her church, she was part of the Lutheran Church, because the Lutheran Church was making inroads with the LGBT community and joining with them in parades and all that. She called it shameful and unnatural. They blamed her and they cited her for hate speech against homosexual community. She had her day in court. She ministered the gospel. She said, look, I'm not in trial here, but it's Paul the Apostle who's in trial. This is what the word of God says. And amazing. God's grace was amazing. She was, the charges were dropped. She's free to go. But she said, very interesting what she says, this is only the beginning of basically laws hurting Christians who speak out what the Bible says. She's absolutely right, Jacob, but it's an amazing win. I didn't think this was going to happen. Maybe I didn't have enough faith, but I prayed that the Lord will give her victory, and he did.
I did as well. Yes, many people did.
But Jacob, what's just to finish up, Christians in Europe, Christians in the West who now speak out of what's going on to our children, the sexualization of children and the homosexualization of our society?
Again, Northern Europe is exceptionally liberal and progressive, but now they are reaping the consequences of what they did. The city of Malmo in Sweden is unlivable because of Islamic gangs. The problems in Denmark, it's unlivable. Okay, they're reaping the consequences of their stupidity and their so-called tolerance. They tolerated the intolerant. That's what they did. They tolerated the intolerant. Okay, well, I thank God for this individual victory in this woman. But what was remarkable about Pavi was that she had been a government minister at one time. She'd been a government minister. and they still went after her. Nobody is immune. It's like Priscilla, the martyr. She was from the Roman nobility, and nobody could believe that the nobility would be martyred for their faith. But she was, and don't ask me why. I have no idea why, but they built a crypt under the Roman Catholic Cathedral in Los Angeles, down there by the old farmers market by Union Station on the right side of the Hollywood Freeway.
Yeah, 101, yeah.
Yeah, there's a big Catholic joint there. And in the crypt where Gregory Peck and all those guys are buried, they took the remains of Priscilla, this Roman noblewoman who was executed by the Roman government. She was the first female from the Roman elite who became a Christian and was martyred for it. And they moved her remains into Los Angeles. I guess she likes the weather. I don't know, but they took her there. She's buried under there with Gregory Peck, you know. Wow. And she's well, people couldn't believe at that time that a member of the Roman nobility could happen to them. Mm-hmm. Remember in the book of Acts when they found out Paul was a citizen, even that they freaked out, and Caesarea they freaked out, but she was from the nobility. Or when you got Instagram closing down the president of the United States and censoring him, nobody is immune. Nobody is immune. It's like Mordecai told Esther, don't think that you're going to be any more safe than any other Jew in the royal palace. No saved Christian is going to be immune. No matter what their position in the world, no matter how much money they have, no saved Christian is going to be immune. The God of this world is going on a rampage because he knows his time is short. But praise Jesus, his time is short. His day is coming.
Amen, man. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you for staying up with us. Thank you for sharing your insights. Always wonderful. Always great to know them. Always people look forward to it. Some hard truth, no doubt, but it's truth that we really need for these days. So we appreciate your time, brother.
Thank you so much, Marco. Vaya con Dios, hermano.
Adios, hermano.
Well, blessings in Jesus, dear friends. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your prayers, your support, certainly. But above all, we appreciate the grace of the Lord in having you be with us. If you are blessed, edified, challenged, encouraged by what you have been hearing on Moriel, we would certainly ask you to subscribe, to give us a thumbs up, and to tell your Christian friends about us. And even tell your unsaved friends about us in the hope and prayer they will hear the gospel and become Christians. Thank you so very much. My name is James Draker Prash, Moriel Ministries. God bless you all.